What's up, everybody? James Malpass here, coming at you with another video. Have some pretty good articles that come out today, and just really want to try to cover them with you and get some opinions, share my thoughts and opinions, and see where it goes from there. TransferGo partners with Ripple to offer global real-time payments everywhere to everyone. This article just come out on Ripple Insights today. I love it when Ripple puts out articles because we know that's coming straight from the source, and we know there's not a whole lot of misconceptions going on in there anyway to look at it in a different way besides what it is. I know we've heard about this in the past couple of days, and I won't go in too much detail of the article, but it pretty much goes with my train of thought of what I'm thinking. So back in 2018, TransferGo partnered with Ripple on a program to help Indian migrants workers send money home to their families faster than ever. So as you go through this article, you'll see that in 2018, they really started going with RippleNet. They started going with the underlying technology, not the cryptocurrency. They started really seeing if the underlying technology is beneficial for them. So as you think about what they did, what TransferGo did with this, would go in that direction, I think you see more and more of this happening, not just with Ripple and XRP, but with countries that are actually working with the underlying technology of blockchain, distributed ledger technology, however what works best for them, however that looks. So in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, guys, in my opinion, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see people that are looking into the underlying technology, and at the moment, I know it's an unpopular opinion, but at the moment, I really and truly feel like the cryptocurrency is not the piece of the puzzle that everybody is needing at the moment. And I know you're thinking to yourself, holy cow, this guy right here is stupid. But the more you look at these things, the more you can see a pattern. The more you can see exactly how I think it's going to happen based off of things that have happened with Ripple. Ripple has actually got out and did the underlying foundation work that needed to be done in order to get businesses interested in the underlying technology of what they offer. That being said, they go out, they talk to a lot of banks. They talk to a lot of payment transfer companies. They talk to a lot of central banks. And what they've actually worked on is pushing xCurrent forward. Not so much XRP, but they've got people interested in the underlying technology. Once people are interested in the underlying technology, then you show them the cost savings that you can add on top of the savings already. So with TransferGo joining Ripple in 2018, yes, they did start out with xCurrent. Yes, they did build a foundation. But as they move forward into this article, you can see what's happening, and I think it's going to happen more and more with every project, not just Ripple and XRP, but with blockchain and distributed ledger technology everywhere. All right, so the CEO acknowledges that by 2020, even a few minutes will be too slow, which is why TransferGo looking into RippleNet's on-demand liquidity with XRP as an alternative to pre-funding. At the same time, the company is expanding its real-time operations into new markets in Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Africa with RippleNet. So now you can start to see a pattern develop. You can start to see a pattern develop that we have to get everybody in the culture of blockchain. We have to get everybody understanding how much time, how much money, how to streamline the process when it comes to what blockchain, distributed ledger technology, what this can actually do for businesses from this day forward. Yes, it makes everything move better. Yes, it makes everything move cheaper. Yes, it makes everything move safer because it has that lack of anonymity to where we can actually see what is going on, and we know if we have somebody in there that's a bad actor that is trying to rip us off for our hard-earned money that we earn with our paychecks that we work hard for every week. So with that being said, once these companies, whether it be Ripple, whether it be IOHK, whether it be the Stellar Foundation, or whatever it is, these companies that are part of the digital space that are building upon blockchain technology, building upon distributed ledger technology, with all of these different assets, first and foremost, we have to open up the gates and we have to get people understanding what blockchain is. Once they have an understanding of that, once they start implementing the blockchain and the distributed ledger technology into their day-to-day lives, into their business opportunities to see exactly where they can go with these things, then we start to see the implementation of what we have. Guys, I need you to understand that we're extremely early into the space. But now is the time that we can make money if we understand exactly what is happening. If we don't get weak hands and just sell out of it, because you're going to have some people that do that. This is not a fair world. You have market makers and you have market takers. In order for one person to gain money, that means somebody has to lose money. That means that somebody that bought into this space, whether it be at 22 cents, whether it be at 50 cents, 80 cents, or $3, however that looks, somebody that bought into this space is going to get weak hands, is going to give up on it. You're going to sell to the person that's going to make the money. That's how it happens. That's how markets are made. It happens every day. And unfortunately, we're going to have winners and we're going to have losers. Not everybody is going to get a participation trophy when it comes to investing into cryptocurrency. So looking at this and looking at what exactly is taking place, we can take what's going on with Ripple and XRP and apply that to all different type of assets inside of the digital space. Because realistically, Ripple and XRP cannot be the only winner. We need more winners in this space, and there are people that are in high places that really understand that really see what's going on with that. And one of those people is going to be Brad Garlinghouse. Brad Garlinghouse, this is some quotes from Brad when he was over at Swell. Brad also spoke of how he thinks there remains a lot of tribalism and religiousness within crypto, which is probably not healthy for the ecosystem as a whole. He added that Ripple's success depends on how well the whole space thrives. This is his quote. I want a lot of these projects to work. I think a lot of them are still in experimentation phase, but I think it's good for Ripple and it's good for XRP. It's good for Bitcoin. It's good for Ether, if everybody else is doing well also. Guys, he has the same thought that I have. We may not have it all together, but together we can have it all. Yes, we have situations to where Bitcoin come out and fundamentally did not do what it was supposed to do. But we have situations also to where the next team has come in and approved upon where it was lacking. It takes all of us, guys. We can't see this vision through if we just looking at one direction and that's the only direction we're going. We have to make sure that we're all in this thing together. And if somebody don't know something, hey, you pick them up, you lift them up, and you move on. That is the reason why we have CEOs like Brad Garlinghouse that is rooting for other projects. One of the projects in which I'm rooting for is definitely Cardano. When I look at Cardano and I see some of the things in which these guys are doing, I can see where they have approved upon the scaling in which Ethereum is lacking. Ethereum is trying to build back up. They're doing a complete algorithm swap, trying to move from a proof of work to a proof of stake. I hope that all pans out for them. But in the meantime, I see where there can be some real trouble with them trying to do so. But at the same time, for the digital space, I'm rooting for that to be a reality. I'm rooting for that to actually happen. We have winners and we have losers, guys. It happens all the time. So one of the things that Cardano is doing, here we go. One of the things that Cardano is doing is they're moving forward with their project. And they're fixing to start actually doing the staking. Public blockchain project Cardano has touched a major milestone and is progressing as planned, according to the founder Charles Hoskinson, co-creator of Ethereum. Hoskinson announced upcoming staking and the testnet release date via Twitter. This is his tweet. The tentative snapshot date will be November 29th. We will do an informative dump on December 5th for all the staking rewards information, including percentages, and the testnet will be released December 9th. These dates are subject to development milestones. Absolutely. Things go wrong. Some dates might not be hit. We've been trying to explain that for 2 years. We've been trying to explain not everything runs to the timeline in which we want. We can do a good guesstimation on when it should be, but not always does it actually pan out to where it needs to be. So if you're not familiar with the roadmap of what Cardano is doing, here's a little short video.
Hi, I'm Charles Hoskinson, Chief Executive Officer of Input Output Hong Kong, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about Cardano. So to understand Cardano, first you have to understand where Cardano came from. So let's talk about the first generation of cryptocurrencies. So first gen is Bitcoin. And the problem that Bitcoin was trying to solve was really, could we create a decentralized money? Could we create some sort of token that lives on some sort of decentralized blockchain maintained by people all around the world, and that token would be scarce and tradable. So when Alice and Bob want to send value to each other, there would be a mechanism for doing that that did not require a trusted third party, a trusted intermediary. Now this was kind of a really cool and interesting idea. It had very old roots starting from the 1980s and beyond, but Bitcoin was really the first to bring this all together. And it was a tremendously successful experiment. After just a few years, Bitcoin not only accrued thousands of users, but also started being worth real money. Tokens went from less than a penny to actually $1 to eventually $100. And right around that time period, we saw a huge influx of people saying, boy, this is really interesting. However, the issue is that the transaction between Alice and Bob has more than just the act of moving money associated with it. There's a story behind that transaction. There's terms and conditions. For example, what if Alice says to Bob, I'll give you the money if and only if you mow my lawn. I'll give you the money if and only if you repair my roof. This is a contract. This is the story. So first generation technology wasn't really well suited for this. Every single time someone wanted to make a change to Bitcoin, they'd have to build another cryptocurrency, or they'd have to figure out how to install some sort of cumbersome overlay protocol like Mastercoin or Colorcoins. So back in 2014, Vitalik Buterin, myself, and many others came together and we launched the first second generation blockchain. And this is Ethereum. Now, Ethereum is kind of like when JavaScript came to the web browser. We went from these static, simple pages that were not terribly functional, but at least they did something, to pages that were fully programmable. This then enabled us to build the Facebooks, the Googles, the Gmails, the experiences we've come to know and love. So Ethereum brought a programming language to a blockchain. So this programming language paradigm allowed smart contracts to be written to have customizable transactions. So when Alice sends that value to Bob, all those terms and conditions could then be embedded within the transaction, and it can be bespoke to her particular needs. Now, this paradigm, like Bitcoin, also took off, and now Ethereum is among the largest of cryptocurrencies and has a huge developer community. Unfortunately, just like Bitcoin, we're starting to enter into a new realm. We're going into the third generation, where we've realized that Ethereum can't scale to millions of users, to billions of users. Ethereum doesn't really have a good developer experience. Ethereum and all cryptocurrencies have really a bad governance experience right now, where every single time there's a major disagreement, instead of finding a way to resolve it, we end up usually seeing things like Ethereum and Ethereum Classic, or things like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. Furthermore, there are big sustainability problems in the space. Namely, after the ICO money is out for a project that's funded this way, or let's say the venture capital runs out, who will fund to grow the chain? Who will fund to actually build out an ecosystem? These are big open questions. So the third generation is all about three topics. One is scalability. Two is interoperability. And finally, there's this notion of sustainability. So the Cardano project is really our philosophy, our vision on how to solve each of these categories in a way that we feel it's going to inherit the best features and lessons learned from Generation 1 and Generation 2, but also add a lot of new concepts and technology to the space. And this project is built with some really good principles, namely two. First off, all the science that guides the solutions to these problems goes through some notion of peer review. So we go to conferences, we write proper scientific papers, we engage universities, and all the engineering, we have the goal to eventually implement as high assurance code. Which means the same types of techniques one would see with the Shinkansen or a jet engine, where when the failure of the system results in human death, we can apply those techniques to our protocols, engineering and development, so that we have a much higher belief in the quality of the code. This avoids events like the DAO, the parity hack, and other such things as we've seen in the space. So let's go through each of these in more detail, starting with scalability. So scalability is kind of a loaded term, and it has a heck of a lot of meanings. But from a cryptocurrency's perspective, you can really think of scalability in three different perspectives. So one is scalability in terms of transactions per second. So you'll often hear people say, well, Bitcoin has 7 transactions per second, or Ethereum has 10 or 20 transactions per second, and this new protocol has 200 transactions or 300 transactions per second. There's this notion of how many transactions am I able to get into a block within some finite period of time. But it's not the only thing that you have to concern yourself with. Transactions carry data. And as you get more transactions, you require more network resources. So there's also this notion of bandwidth or network, where for a system to scale, if it's going to go to millions and billions of users, that system could require hundreds of megabytes to gigabytes per second of bandwidth to be able to support all the data flowing through it. This is very common in the enterprise world, but not quite where we need to be in the peer-to-peer world. And then finally, there's this notion of data scale. So blockchains store things, hopefully, forever. And so every time you put a transaction in, regardless if it's relevant or not, it ends up in the log. And as you have more and more transactions per second, you need more and more data. And as a consequence, blockchains will grow from mega.
All right, guys. That is the ultimate problem with almost every cryptocurrency that we have at the moment. Can it scale? And I think that realistically, I think that's the problem in which we have to face. Can it scale? Cardano is working hard to fix that. The Ripple team is working hard for scalability. Not only do we need scalability, but we also have to have interoperability. I think by what you're seeing in the ledger, in the XRP ledger, I'm really thinking that the interoperability of the XRP ledger has come to a point where I think it's a reality. I think that the reality of interoperability throughout XRP and the XRP ledger is a game changer, and as soon as we can figure out the scaling to where we can get the transactions where we need them. And like I said, it's just not about just moving the money. You have all three concepts of scalability, where we have to move the money, we have to move the data, and then we have to worry about, do we have enough megabytes, digibytes, or gigabytes, or however many bytes you need to store all of this stuff, moving into terabytes, moving into just unprecedented amounts of data in which this has to store. We're early, guys. There's so many of these things that are just trying to figure it out. But then there's some that's not going to be able to figure it out. When you start running into situations, when you're developers, here we go right here. When your developers are actually bashing you in the news, this is not good. When your developers are going around explaining to everyone how you can't scale, it's a bad situation. Here we have a developer that is building upon EOS. The EOS mainnet is in a sad state. With intense network congestion and spam, users are unable to access their EOS account currently. The network requires around 30 EOS staked in an account in order to perform a single transaction each day. So when you start thinking about that, you really start thinking about how the scalability of Bitcoin has come into play and what that caused. With Bitcoin not being able to scale, ultimately that is where we get the high transaction fees for Bitcoin. And then you get a backlog so big that it takes hours, maybe in some instances days, maybe in some instances a couple of days to actually make a transaction. But then we go back to the interoperability in which the XRP ledger has actually created, and now we're starting to see Bitcoin transactions on the XRP ledger. We're starting to see Ethereum transactions on the XRP ledger. Why? Because of interoperability, because they figured out a way to let everything speak to each other and work together with a common goal of moving from A to B. Interoperability is what Ripple team has basically accomplished with the XRP ledger. That's the reason I'm bullish on XRP. I'm bullish on XRP for a multitude of reasons, but I see them working hard and pushing forward to make this a better space, not only for XRP, but they're an attempt to make this a better space for the whole ecosystem. They want to be interoperable with the whole ecosystem. What is good for Ripple and XRP is good for Bitcoin, is good for Ethereum, is good for EOS, is good for ADA. We may not have it all together, but together we can have it all, guys. Tribalism in the space is a problem. I agree with what Brad Garlinghouse is saying. But we also have to understand not all of it is tribalism. Some of it is people understanding that, yes, Gen 1 cryptocurrency didn't work for what it was intended. Granted, Bitcoin is the grandfather of all. Bitcoin is the name brand behind all cryptocurrency. Bitcoin is not going away. Bitcoin will be around as long as we're moving things digitally. That name brand will be around and it will be profitable. That's just reality of the situation. It's not going anywhere. I do see it actually becoming an altcoin. I do see something else stepping up in its place and actually doing better because we already see that others are doing better. So not all of it is tribalism. Some of it is knowing that some projects just won't do what they were intended to do. For everybody that really and truly likes Ethereum, I would really highly suggest start digging into ADA. But also you need to understand how early ADA is in the process. ADA has a long way to go before we see profitability. He talks about scalability, interoperability, sustainability, and what comes after you get all three of those is profitability. Keep that in your mind. Don't sell out too early, and understand that we are in this thing early. If you want to see the profit, we have to make sure that we see this thing through. It's going to take time. And always remember, guys, we may not have it all together, but together we can have it all. I appreciate you coming in and hanging out with me. If you like the content that we provide, please like, please subscribe.